Let's begin with an empty scene in Blender 2.8. First, let's set up the scene for modeling in real-world scale. Click on Units, change the length to millimeters, and the unit scale should be 0.001. And at the top in the Overlays panel, we'll change the scale to 0.001 as well. Now that that's done, we can add our object to the scene. Be sure you have the Extra Objects add-on enabled in the preferences. Shift A, Math Function, Regular Solid. By default, you'll see a tetrahedron appear in the scene. Change the size to 10.0. Now we could tab to enter edit mode. Press 3 for face select mode. Right-click to bring up the face context menu and choose extrude individual faces. Hold down Control while you pull out the extrusion until you get to 10.0. And as you can see down here, the offset is -10 millimeters. Now that we have this, let's change the transform orientation to normal and the pivot point to individual origins. Press S on the keyboard, hold down Control and scale it out until you get to 1.5. Now it should look like this. Press X on the keyboard for delete and choose faces. Now we can switch to edge select mode by pressing 2 on the keyboard. And we'll select 2 edges, like you see here. Right click for the edge context menu. Choose bridge edge loops. Now down here in the context parameters, we will change the number of cuts to 3. And interpolation should be set to blend surface. That should give you this result. Now we can go ahead and select the next 2 edges on the model and Shift R to repeat the last operation. We'll just keep doing this around the model. Select 2 edges, Shift R. Until you have all of the connections complete, like this. Now select one of the edges in the center of the new bridges that we've created. Shift G to bring up Select Similar. Face angles, and that should select all of them. Now over here in our icons, we'll choose Shrink Flatten, and we'll just pull out that selection maybe to around -5.0 should be sufficient. And that'll give us this result. Now let's create some seams on the model so that if you choose to render this object, you have some UV coordinates. So first step will just be to select all of the edge loops around the openings, like so. And holding down Shift, we could select these interior edges as well. Get some of these edge loops. Like so. And once you have all these edges selected for your seams, just right click for the context menu and choose Mark Seam. Now at the top, if we go to the UV editing tab, scroll back, select A to select everything, and in the UV shortcut, we could just click Unwrap, and that'll give us this result. And this is only temporary for now. We'll go back and fix the seams later as we add some modifiers to the object. So now we can go over to the Modifiers tab in the Properties panel. And let's bring in a subdivision surface modifier. We'll give it 2 iterations, 2 subdivisions. Next, we'll add a smooth Laplacian modifier. Increase repeat to 3, and you can play around with the border, but the main thing is the factor. So we'll bring up that factor quite a bit, and you can play around with the border, as I said, and get all kinds of different results here. But I'm going to keep my border at around the default 0.010. Okay. So let me minimize these panels, and next we'll add a solidify modifier. We'll enable high quality normals and even thickness. And we'll increase the thickness to 2.0 millimeters, which should be sufficient for 3D printing. And we'll give it an inner crease of 0.9 and an outer crease of 0.9. And we don't want to go all the way to 1.0 with the crease factor, because that'll give us infinitely sharp edges, and we want to maintain a little bit of a bevel around the edges there. And when we add our subdivision surface modifier to the top of the stack and increase the iterations of the subdivision iterations, you'll see that our edges have a little bit of a bevel to them, which is desirable for this particular model. Alright. And if you're going to 3D print, I suggest around 4 subdivisions in that final subdivision modifier. Okay. Now, if you want to render this object, we can go to the Shading tab, and we'll add a new material in here and select the principled BSDF. And if you have Node Wrangler add-on enabled, all you need to do is click Control T, and that will add a mapping subset of nodes. Okay, and it'll attach it to the base color. In this instance, we can get rid of that image texture, and instead we'll bring in Shift A, and we'll bring in a noise texture. Connect the vector parameter of the mapping node to the vector parameter of the noise texture, and then Shift A again to bring in the bump node. And we'll go ahead and match up the color parameter with the height of that bump node, and then attach the normal output to the normal parameter of the principled shader. Now, we don't see much result here, but if we increase the scale, you can see it starting to come into view here. So you can either increase the scale all the way until you're satisfied with the look of that. Or alternatively, you can increase it a little bit, maybe 25, and then increase the scale on the mapping node to maybe 50 in the X and Y parameters. And that gives us a nice result. Maybe we can reduce the noise scale a little bit more. Bring it down to maybe 4.8 or 5. You can see the result of that. Now obviously, because we have a solidify modifier in the stack, our UVs aren't being transferred over to the thickness around the border of that solidify modifier. So one way we can correct that is to go ahead and collapse the first few modifiers, including the solidify modifier. Now we don't need to collapse the final subdivision surface modifier. And we'll go ahead into the UV editing, and we'll go ahead and unwrap one more time. And that gives us this result. If we go back in the shading now, you can see that our UVs are properly aligned to the borders now. And we could play around with the scale from here if we want to, and gives us a nice rough surface there, as you can see. We can change the base color, give it a light blue, and then a subsurface color of maybe a little bit darker blue, and then increase the subsurface scattering. And we'll change it from the default to random walk, which is a little bit better for the subsurface scattering. And if you're happy with how that looks, then you can go ahead and set up a scene to render it. And this is the final result here. So I hope you enjoyed this quick tutorial, very simple model. Please, if you liked the video, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe. And also click the bell notifications so you can get notified when new videos are added. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.